It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. Folks are all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. We're all excited, we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. So, the last 2 weeks we have been talking about, remember? I know, we have a lot of people here that have not been here. Maddie might know the answers once she knows what we've been talking about. Okay, here's a hint. What have we been talking about? What have we been talking about? It's in this picture, but there's a lot of other things in the picture too. Maria, you think you know? Jesus, okay, yes, it was about Jesus. The resurrection. What's the word resurrection mean? If someone is resurrected, that means they were raised from the dead. Yeah. So resurrection means they were raised from the dead. And so, our stories have been about someone who was raised from the dead. Who was raised from the dead?
God.
He is God, but what's his name? Jesus. That's right. Jesus was raised from the dead. And the morning that Jesus was raised from the dead, we're going to review a little bit. There were soldiers out in front of the place to make sure nobody would come and steal his body. Yep. But an angel came and the ground shook and the soldiers were scared to death. And an angel came and opened the grave, but when he opened the grave, it was already empty. Yep. But the soldiers went into town and the priest told him to say, while we were sleeping, somebody stole his body. But had somebody stolen the body that was in there?
No.
No. What had happened to the body that was in there? Whose body was in there? Whose body was in there? It was Jesus' body, right? And Jesus was raised from the dead. And the big word that means raised from the dead is resurrected. So Jesus was raised from the dead. And then some of his friends, the women that wanted to come and put spices with his body and things like that, when they got there, was Jesus there?
No.
No. He was gone. His body was gone and he was gone, and they didn't know what happened. Some angels said that he was alive, but did they see Jesus? No. And they went back and they saw Peter and John, and Peter and John went and they went to the tomb. And when they got to the tomb, did they see Jesus? No. They went inside the tomb, they looked around. It was very neat. Nobody had come and stolen the body. They could tell that because the clothes were still there, very neat. And so they believed that Jesus was alive, but they had not seen him yet. Another lady came back later. Her name was Mary Magdalene. And she looked in and she thought for sure they had taken his body and put it somewhere. And when she looked in, she saw angels there. And they said, "What are you looking for?" And then she heard a voice behind her, a man, saying, "Why are you crying? What are you looking for?" And she thought, this guy will at least tell me where his body is. She turned around and said, "If you will just tell me where he is, I will take care of him." And then she heard her name. And who was it that was behind her?
God.
And what's his name?
Jesus.
Jesus, that's right. So Jesus was there, and so Mary Magdalene was the very first person that saw Jesus after he was, what's the big long word? Resurrected, which means raised from the dead. So Mary Magdalene was the very first person to see Jesus after he was raised from the dead. Well, then last week we talked about how a little bit later that day, two people were leaving town. The big feast, the big celebration was over, and in the middle of the big celebration, the person that they had followed for a long time had been captured and killed, right? Jesus had been captured and then killed by the government, and they didn't know what to think. They had heard that morning that his body was gone, and some people said that he'd been raised from the dead, but had they seen him? They hadn't seen him, and they were walking along talking to one another about all these things. And who came up next to them and started talking with them? Jesus did. They didn't know it was Jesus. Jesus made sure, at that point, Jesus made sure that they couldn't tell who he was. Stop playing with the carpet. Okay? They couldn't tell who he was, and then after a while, they were telling him about their things, about all that had happened, and Jesus started telling them how all the Bible that they had ever read taught them that they should have expected the Messiah. They should have expected that person that they were following to have to suffer before he received all the honor and glory of being a king. And they went into the house and they started eating, and before they ate, that man that they were walking with prayed over their food, and immediately they realized, their eyes were open, they realized it was him, and then what happened? He disappeared. That was odd. But Jesus, what kind of body did Jesus have? What had happened to him? He had been resurrected. He was raised from the dead, and his body was different. It was a real body, but it was different. And the men, they ran back to see all the other disciples in the upper room, and they were telling them there, and as they were telling them, the people there said, "Yeah, we heard that he was alive. Mary has seen him, and Peter has seen him." Remember Peter? Remember Peter? Peter has seen him, and right while they were talking, what happened? Jesus showed up right in the middle. Now the doors were locked, and our door's not locked, it's closed, but if we locked the door, and then all of a sudden, somebody was standing right here, that would be kind of scary, wouldn't it?
Yes.
But they recognized that it was Jesus, and so they were not afraid anymore. Jesus' body was different. Well, and then he left. And the next week, all of them were there, plus another one, and he showed up again. And that one that hadn't seen him was like, "I'll believe it when I see it." And Jesus said to him, "Look, here's the prints in my hands. You want to put your fingers in them? Right there. There they are. I don't have them, but Jesus did. And here's the hole in my side from the spear that they stabbed into me. You want to put your hand in there?" And that man was like, "I don't need to do that. I believe. You are the Lord, and you are God." Well, so Jesus showed him, so the disciples, all the disciples, groups of disciples, saw Jesus how many times? 2 times, yep. When they were all in the room, and then the next week when they were all in the room, and today I'm going to tell you about the 3rd time. The Bible says it's the 3rd time that he showed himself unto the disciples. Well, here's what was going on. That was in Jerusalem. Jesus told Mary to tell him that he would meet them up in Galilee, which was, I don't know, about 50 miles away. So after this time, sometime, they hadn't seen Jesus anymore, and they must have thought, "Oh yeah, he said he would meet us up in Galilee." So they went back. That's where most of them lived, where their homes were, or where their families were from. And so they went up to Galilee, and they were waiting around. And I can imagine Peter. Remember Peter? I can imagine Peter thinking, along with the rest of them, "I'm so glad that Jesus is alive again." But then, and Peter had remembered, Peter saw Jesus. Jesus came and talked to Peter, and then he saw him there in the upper room, and then he saw him there again in that upper room. And Peter, he knew he had a body, but it was a different kind of a body, because it could come through, it could just appear inside locked rooms and all that. It was a real body. But when Peter would think about it, I bet in the back of his mind, he still had kind of an upset feeling in his heart. Can anybody think of why Peter would have an upset feeling in his heart? We'll let Maria try. She's younger. And then we'll see about it. What do you think? Why do you think Peter would have an upset feeling? Because he was sad. And why do you think Peter would still be sad? Even though, he was happy that Jesus was alive, but he was still kind of sad about something. It sure seems like he would still be sad. Do you know this story? Okay. So what do you think?
Jesus is actually his body.
Well, that's not true. Because it was actually his body.
No, he doesn't. I don't mean that. It's like it's his body, but it's not like the old one. Like
Yeah, well, it could be that, but I don't think so. I think there was another reason why Peter was probably still a little bit sadder. Just something was still just not perfect.
Because like he would like disappear for like a couple of days, and they didn't see him.
Okay, that's true. But let me remind you about something. You remember, Peter would think back and say, I'm so glad Jesus was alive. And then he would remember about the day that Jesus died. And on the day that Jesus died, right before that day, the day before Jesus died, Peter had said, I am the most loyal person you know, Jesus. I will stick with you through everything. Jesus was telling him how people hated him and would want to capture Jesus and crucify and kill him. And Peter said, no, that can't happen. I will stick with you. I will stay with you. Even if they take you to jail, I'll go to jail with you. Even if they kill you, I will give my life for you. Remember Peter saying stuff like that? And then what happened? They came and took Jesus, and did Peter do any of that? No, he didn't. In fact, not only did Peter just let Jesus go and not stick around, Peter even he disclaimed him. That's right. He denied him. People said, "You know him," and he's not. I don't know who he is. Peter denied Jesus, and he felt terrible about that. The Bible tells us that the third time he did it, the rooster crowed, and Jesus looked at Peter, and Peter went out and he cried very, very hard. So, I'm sure Peter must have thought, I wonder if Jesus will ever have me do anything for him. Have you ever done something that you shouldn't do, and you just kind of wonder, I wonder if, like for your mom, I wonder if they really want me to do stuff for them anymore. You shouldn't have to feel that way, but sometimes we do things so bad, we think, I don't think I'm any good for anything. And Peter probably thought, I wonder if Jesus will ever have me do anything for him again. And they were up there, up around, how many times had Peter said that he didn't know who Jesus was? 3 times. 3 times people said, you know him. And he said, no, I don't know him. I don't know who he is at all. And so Peter and 6 other men, they were up in Galilee, and they were hanging out there, and it's kind of wondering when Jesus is going to show up again. But they didn't see him. Finally, it got late one day, and Peter said, you know what, guys? I'm going to go fishing. Because they went fishing at night back in those days. They went fishing at night. And so the rest of them said, yeah, let's go fishing. I don't know why they said that. I can think of a couple times when they were out there on the lake going fishing, and Jesus showed up. Jesus was with them there. They might have thought about, maybe he will show up if we're out fishing. I don't know why they thought that, or if they thought that, but they decided they were going to go fishing. And they had been fishermen before. They knew how to go fishing. How many of you have ever been fishing? You know where to find the places where all the fish are? They knew where all the fish were. And they went out in their boat, and it got darker. It got to be just the perfect time to catch fish. And then, they didn't use poles like they used these great big nets, and they would fling the net out there, and then it would sink down, and then they would pull it in, and there would be fish inside there. So they got to be just the perfect time in the perfect place, and they threw the net out there, and it sink down, they pull it in, and there was nothing in their net. Let's try that again. They took it, and they threw the net out there, and it landed on the water, and it sink down, and it pull it in, and it's coming in really easy. If it's coming in really easy, what does that probably mean?
There's probably nothing in it.
Nothing in it. They pull it in. There was actually 2 boats, because there was 2. They're out there together, and they fling it out there again, and it falls in the water, pull it in, coming in really easy. Maybe 1 fish in there. Not even 1 fish. They did that all night. Because night is the best time to catch fish. They kept going, and they didn't catch any fish. Pretty soon it got to be early morning. The sun was making the sky brighter. And how many fish did they caught? 0 fish. all night. And they probably said, well, let's just go in. That was kind of a wasted night. I thought, at least we got to be out on the water. But they were throwing the net out and pulling it in and empty, every single time empty. They never caught any fish. And they were coming close to the shore, and there was a man on the shore. And the man said, hey guys, did you catch any fish? What do you think they had to say?
No.
Nope, not even one. He said, if you throw the net on the right side of the boat, you will catch fish. They probably thought, how does he know that? Well, we haven't caught anything yet. So they went to the right side of the boat. They threw the net out there. It landed on there. They started pulling in, and it was really, really hard to pull in. There was fish in there. There was so much fish in there. I mean, all night long, nothing, and then all of a sudden, lots and lots and lots of fish. So much fish they couldn't even get in the boat. And John said to Peter, he said, that's the Lord. That's Jesus. And Peter, he'd been working hard, so he threw his coat back on, and he wanted to see Jesus. He jumped in the water and swam into the shore, and there was Jesus on the shore. How did Peter know it was Jesus?
Because
He could see him.
Like know where fish are back there.
Yes, and when he got there, did he have to say, who are you? No, because Jesus had his own body, right? And the guys in the boats, they started bringing the boats in. They couldn't even get the fish into their boat. They just kind of dragged the net behind, and they all got to the shore, and they saw the man on the shore, and they knew it was
Jesus.
How did they know it was Jesus?
Because nobody else knows where the
But more than that, they looked at him. They saw his face. Whose face was it? Jesus' face. They saw his body. Whose body was it? Jesus' body. It wasn't a spirit. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't something goofy or funny. It was Jesus. They knew it was Jesus. And Jesus said, how many fish do you have? Peter went out in there and he started pulling the net up. It was so full. How many know how many fish was in there?
10.
It was a lot. Let's see if any of the workers remember how many fish was in there.
I guess.
You can guess.
1,000?
Not thousands. It wasn't that big of a net. It was over 100. 153. 153. And they weren't little fish. They weren't little goldfish. They were big fish. So the net should never have held that. And Peter's pulling and pulling. The net should have broke over and over again, but it didn't. And that was a miracle. So Jesus showed them where the fish was. That was a miracle. And then the net didn't break while they pulled it in, and that was a miracle. And then, what? Oh, that was a long time before. But then right here, then he says, are you guys hungry? And of course they were hungry. They'd been up working all night long. And he said, come, I already have breakfast for you. So Jesus, there was a fire, and he had fish cooking on the fire, and he had bread already there. Where did that fish and bread come from? Jesus can make bread and fish, can't he? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And he had the food already there for them. They came in, and all 7 of them, they saw Jesus, and they knew it was him. No, but the Bible says, nobody said, who are you? Why did nobody say, who are you?
Because they saw him.
Because they saw him. They saw his body. They saw his hands. They saw his feet. And he ate food with them. Now, I don't know what the movies say now, but a ghost, a spirit, doesn't eat. It can't. There's nothing there for it. It just like fall down on the ground. It can't eat. Can't hold stuff. But Jesus' body was not a fake body. It was not a ghost. It was his real body. It could go in and out of stuff. It could disappear and reappear. But it was a real body that ate food and did things. Well, so now, that was how many times now had Jesus showed himself to his disciples? That was the 3rd time he showed himself to his disciples. And as they were eating, they were finishing up eating, and Jesus started asking Peter a question. He said, Peter, do you love me more than you love these? Why do you think Jesus asked Peter that? What do you think? Because what?
Jesus
fed him food. But what had Peter done?
He said that he doesn't know him.
Yeah, he said, I don't even know him. And Jesus said, and so Jesus asked Peter, said, do you love me more than these things? Maybe more than your friends here, more than these fish? And what do you think Peter said?
Yes.
Yes, Lord, I love you. And you know what Jesus said to him? Then feed my lambs. Now, Jesus didn't have lambs, but he had people that followed him. And he wanted, what was he saying to Peter? He's saying, I want you to work for me. Right? So then Jesus asked him another question. He said, Peter, do you love me more than these? He'd already asked him that question, didn't he?
Yes.
But you don't just ignore Jesus, do you?
I know why.
You know why?
Because he's telling God, Jesus knows he's telling a lie, and he wants to see if he's going to tell him the truth.
Well, I don't know about telling a lie, but it's kind of, Jesus knows him. And so Peter said, oh Lord, you know I love you. And so then Jesus said, I want you to feed my sheep. So lambs are young, right? And sheep are older. And lambs and sheep always follow. So Jesus was saying, I want you to feed, I want you to teach my young followers. I want you to teach my older followers. And then Jesus asked them another question. What do you think was the third question he asked them? The same thing. That's right. Now, why do you think? And so Jesus said, Peter, do you love me more than these? And Peter started to get a little bit upset. He said, oh, Lord, you know everything. So Peter was saying, I'm not lying. You know what's inside me. You know what's in me. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, I want you to feed my sheep. I want you to teach my followers. Remember, Peter must have thought before. Remember, we were thinking, Peter probably thought, I don't know if Jesus would ever want me to do anything for him. Right? Why? Because how many times had he said, I don't know him?
3 times. 3.
And so, I don't know for sure. The Bible doesn't tell us why, but it sure seems like Jesus wanted Peter to know 3 times that he wanted him to work for him, right? How many times did Jesus say, do you love me?
3 times.
How many times did Jesus say, do this work for me?
3 times.
3 times. Yeah. So Peter knows. Peter has confessed his sin. Peter knows that Jesus knows about him. And Peter knows that Jesus wants him to work for him. And so Jesus said, Peter, you know what? The time is coming. Right? When you were young, you did whatever you wanted. But the time is coming when people are going to take you and do things to you that you don't want them to do. And Jesus was saying that to tell him that someday he would give his life. He would die, not of old age, but he would die just like Jesus did. Jesus gave his life, but who took his life? The soldiers did, right? And so Jesus was telling Peter, you're going to live for me, you're going to work for me, you're going to teach my followers, and there's going to be a time when people are going to take you and you're going to die. The Bible tells us that Peter was crucified in almost exactly the same, history tells us that Peter was crucified in almost the same way that Jesus was. And then, but Jesus said to Peter, he said, but you, that's going to happen, you just follow me. And he must have begun to walk away. Jesus started walking away, and what do you think Peter did? You think Peter said, well, I don't know if I want to do that. If I follow him, I'm going to die someday when I don't want to. Peter do that? No, he just said he loves the Lord, and he did love the Lord. And so he did. He followed Jesus, and he saw his friend John kind of following along, and Peter said to Jesus, what's going to happen to him? Because Jesus had just told him, when you get older, you're going to die before your body just wears out and dies. So Peter's like, well, what's going to happen to him? What do you think Jesus said? You think Jesus knew what was going to happen to John? He did know. But let me tell you, he didn't tell Peter what was going to happen to John. He said, what? If I want to, I can let John live all the way until I come back. That doesn't mean anything to you. You just follow me. And you know what, in a certain way, everybody who believes Jesus, everyone who believes, who confesses with their mouth the Lord Jesus and believes in their heart that God has raised him from the dead, everyone who is saved, what should we all be doing? Remember Jesus said to Peter, you just teach my followers, and then he said, you,
Telling people about Jesus.
yeah, okay, but he said follow me. Remember that? You follow me. Doesn't matter what I'm going to do to that other guy. You just follow me. And all of us should follow Jesus, shouldn't we? Now, Jesus isn't walking around on the earth today, right? He's not going to show up here and we're going to follow him. What do you think Jesus means to follow him? How can, if you are saved, if you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, if you confess that Jesus is the Lord, you believe that? How can you follow Jesus? How can you follow Jesus? Maddie?
By the Bible or listening to your friends.
So by the Bible, what do you mean by that?
Like you can read the Bible. and
Read the Bible. Yeah. And when the Bible tells us to do certain things, we should do it, right? That would be a way to follow Jesus. And then you said something about friends.
Like if your friends been to church, then like and you never been to it, you can listen to them. Or you could tell people.
Your friends learn something at church, and you can listen to what they learn at church, okay? Or you can tell people about the Bible, right? You can tell people about Jesus, right? You can obey. Jesus would want you to do that, right? So there's lots of ways that we can follow Jesus, even though we will not see his body. He has a body. It's in heaven right now. And someday, if we are saved, we'll see his body. But right now, how can we follow Jesus? We can obey the Bible. We can tell other people, just like Peter was supposed to teach Jesus' followers. We can tell people about Jesus. There's some people who don't believe that Jesus is Lord, right? Some people that don't believe that God raised him from the dead. That means that they're not saved, but we can tell them, and if they will believe that, then they will be saved, right? That would be following Jesus. So we should try. We should try our hardest to follow Jesus as closely and as, what's the right word, the best way that we can.